Hi everyone, I'm Johann Castanera at the Bach Foundation. Today I am not in Trogen at the church where you have usually seen me before at the Bach Foundation concerts, but I am today at the Gallus Media recording studio in St. Gallen, where our foundation is based. So why am I here today? A great moment has arrived. Yes, today Rudolf Lutz will be answering your questions that you have been sending us after we reached the figure of 200,000 friends. Well, we are now well beyond that, I have to say, but we still want to answer your questions. So here I am with Rudolf. How are you today?
Well, I'm fine, and I'm looking forward to answer your questions. Hi, everyone.
We are delighted to be here. We have many, many questions. I'm sure we can get through all of them. There are many, many, many of them. So let's get started straight away. A friend from Lima, Peru, which you know we have many, many friends in Latin America, has asked, what's special about Bach when compared with Mozart or Beethoven? Could be said that Bach is superior to them. What do you have to say?
I think you could now open your bottle of wine and good food to eat and then listen to me for the next 2 hours. No, of course, I can't go into that detail with this incredible question. Well, I love them all, the composers you named. I would say they're geniuses, all of them, the three. But what is very special about Bach? I would say, if I want to break it down to perhaps 2 or 3 little important things, he is a very original sort of composer. His music is genuine. If you hear 2 or 3 seconds of Bach, you can be sure it can't be another composer, especially when he is come to his master period. Of course, you sometimes find beginner pieces where you think that might also be Buxtehude or Böhm or Pachelbel. But when you hear a special piece, let's say like this one here, you can't say that's anything else but the Matthew Passion. So the one piece you hear is clearly that piece, that very special piece, a masterpiece, but you also, after 2 or 3 seconds here, it must be Bach himself. I think it's the same with Mozart. You said Mozart and
Beethoven.
And Beethoven, yeah.
Beethoven, as the English say, but we say Beethoven.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you something, Johann. A friend from Barcelona would like to know more about the foundation and its mission.
Well, I'm sure most of you know already about what the foundation does, but I want to say it again for those of you who don't. The foundation has been set up in Switzerland, here in St. Gallen, and has the mission of really widening people's access to Bach's music, and particularly the vocal music. So we are very much focused on Bach's vocal works. That means all the cantatas, the passions, the oratoriums, and some motets. There might be something else in between because people are always discovering, scholars, new things by Bach. But for the time being, we're just doing 1 cantata every month, which means that our project is going to take about 25 years, Rudolf, is that right?
That's correct.
That's approximate.
If I might be able to have the end, I would be nearly 80. But perhaps, you know, God knows if he wants to give me the time to live so long.
Well, we very much hope so. We very much hope so. So that's in essence what the foundation does. A very special thing about the foundation's concerts is the concert format, which means, you know, in classical music you usually get a very rich program with different pieces and styles. We don't do that. We do 1 cantata every month in Trogen, the church you've seen before in our videos, and we perform it twice. Always with a workshop, introductory workshop, where Carl Graf And Rudolf Lutz speak about the work, about the biblical texts, and so forth. Then there is, not to be forgotten, one apéro, one aperitif, where people can enjoy some wonderful Swiss cheese and other specialties. And then with a fulfilled stomach, they can go on and fulfill their minds and their musical minds, and they listen to the cantata, to the first performance of the cantata. Then there is the so-called reflection lecture where somebody, a great personality from the arts, from the business world, from many different domains, speak about the text of the cantata from a contemporary viewpoint. So after that, enlightened knowledge about the work, the cantata is performed a second time. It's a really wonderful experience. Shall we go on?
I think Johann couldn't have said it better, the way what our goals are in the foundation, in the Johann Sebastian Bach Foundation.
Great. Now we've got a question from Mexico, from a Mexican friend who believes that Bach's music stimulates the brain and enhances mathematical skill. What do you think about this? Bach and mathematics, that's a very interesting point.
I think we should open the next bottle for this question, which would also take us a whole evening or even more. I would say that about the math in Bach, that's quite an interesting thing. His sons, Philipp Emanuel, Wilhelm Friedemann,
yes.
They were asked by Forkel after the death of their father what was very special in the way the father made music, and they said when he got a theme, he would exactly know what he could do with this theme. He would improvise a few. He would know if he could use this. If he could make a stress or anything like that. All the counterpunctual tricks he would have seen immediately. And I think that shows that Bach must have been a person who can do combinations. I would say he's like a check master, somebody who immediately sees the possibilities, the options, how to get the enemy into a bit of a struggle. That might be the math part of Bach. I think if you listen to Bach, it might stimulate the brain, but if you study Bach, it surely stimulates the brain. And I'm quite sure you also play Bach, Johann, you're a pianist. What is your experience concerning complexity in Bach?
Well, for me, Bach and number is a very interesting question, and I actually know that I read that by the end of his life, I don't remember the year exactly, but he was asked to join a society in Germany, which was made up of very eminent minds, mathematicians, scientists, and I think he did that at the request of his son, one of his sons. And then when he went there and brought one of his wonderful pieces, I think it was a fugue, and people loved it, but then he didn't come back again because he said that the mathematical stuff was actually too dry for him. So I think there is a lot of math in Bach's music, but there is also a lot of heart. I wanna stress that point because we see a lot of complexity, counterpoint, a lot of structural thought, right? A lot of thought about proportions, a lot of care about how lines are built. That's one of the things that it's most difficult when you play Bach, right? To get that horizontal understanding rather than vertical. Of course, there are chords, but there are lines as well. So beyond all that, there is always musical and emotional meaning.
I'm absolutely accord with you, and I was thinking of a question. We, of course, said we wanted to go along the question line, but I think I found a question. A friend would really like to know what your feelings are when listening to Bach's music.
Yes.
We'll just test that now. Schwan. I'll play you a cantata, Süßer Trost, mein Jesus kommt, and you would afterwards tell a bit about your feelings.
Great.
Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
It's a Christmas one. That's the invention, that's the idea. It's a flute playing. The violins and the oboe, they do the basses. And the flute does Now, Schwan, I'm interested what you have for feelings if you listen to this.
Well, I know what the title of the piece is, but even if I didn't, the piece and even the key, I think is G major. Is that right? Or
It's
is it
G. It's G major.
G
yes.
major.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it has conveys me such a feeling of confidence and peace.
Yes.
This music, these light ensemble, tam, pam, pam, and then the flute above with these figurations.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it's so special that actually the text, what it's saying, is that Jesus is coming. It's like trost. How would you describe trost in English?
Well, I think it's consolation.
Consolation.
And
right.
sweet consolation. Dolce. That's what I love very much about it.
Consuelo in Spanish. Well, and I think even if you are not a believer, even if you are not a Christian, it doesn't really matter because the message is so powerful as conveyed by the music that you get this, you get the meaning. So you can either call it Jesus, you can either call it anything you want, but it's the meaning is there. So for me, my feelings were really of comfort when I listened to this introduction of the cantata.
I think I feel it in the exact same way. The sweetness of this idea of letting a flute just keep a note, a long, long, long note, and then suddenly. I'll come back to Mozart. He does things like that too. Remember the B-flat major sonata. It's such a normal harmony. For the Christmas pudding. I know I love the Christmas pudding, of course.
I do too.
And here, the baby, the cradling of the baby, and then the flute. And that I want to show you. This is a normal Lego. This is a normal Lego brick you use in any piece of a Baroque time. This. Corelli uses it, other composers use it, just moving from one chord to the other and using jambus, pam, pam, as a short, long, and using a note, a fifth note, and then this figure, a normal tetrachord. Everybody, all the composers of the time use these figures, but the way Bach uses all these little Lego parts and brings them together, I think that's one of his outstanding possibilities of making music.
I would agree with that. Thank you for playing that. It's given me a great feeling. Shall we move on?
I think no.
Yes.
We have to, otherwise we'll be here for the third bottle if it goes on like that.
Or the fourth. So now, we've got another question. A friend who is interested to know if we are performing the entire oeuvre, the entire work of Johann Sebastian. Maybe I can answer that quickly. Well, as I mentioned before, Bach's works are immense. The foundation is at the moment focused just on the vocal work. Apart from the cantatas, which we are doing ongoing, we've done already other things. We did the St. Matthew's Passion last year, which, let me tell you, is going to be released on CD next March. So keep an eye on that, because I think it's going to be a great release. So the answer to that question is really vocal work. That's our mission.
Exactly, that's the case.
That's the case.
Just a question,
Yes?
Johann. How many minutes do you think does the whole work of Bach have a duration? It was one of the questions from one of our followers, a question I couldn't answer.
Well, I couldn't. I've never thought about that. But certainly many minutes.
I would say very, very many minutes, and there would be a great difference in the way the length would be, because the performance praxis with Bach is so incredibly different. If you think, the Matthew Passion I played you, sometimes you hear it like this. This Matthew Passion would go very, very many more minutes. On the other hand, what I wanted to remark, even if you hear it like that, I wouldn't perform it like that, but if you hear it like that in a convincing manner of interpretation, it sounds great and it releases other sorts of forces. And that's what fascinates me with a great composer. You can do it like that, or like that, or like that, and you always hear something else. If I play it like this, then it's the sadness, it's the Verzweiflung. What is Verzweiflung?
Desperation.
Desperation. And if I do it like this, it's the morning. But you were telling us about the minutes. You also couldn't for sure say. Perhaps we would have to ask a Sunny Classical or some other CD factory who's got a whole edition of Bach. How many minutes does Johann Sebastian Bach write music? And on the other hand, he wrote so much more music which is lost, we couldn't say for sure.
Exactly. There are so many things he wrote, even cantatas. We know today that there are many, probably various years, because of course he would compose cantatas for the church in annual cycles, which has been lost. So I think it's impossible to answer that question.
That's true.
Well,
now a friend from Maastricht, Holland would like to know if we offer auditions.
maybe you can reply that.
Well, we haven't planned that in the moment. We have already thought about it, but in the moment there are no auditions.
Because we have a standing group of, we have an orchestra, we have a choir, so we really have our own musicians that play with us. Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's exactly true. And we've got an agent for the orchestra, we've got an agent for the choir, and we've got an agent for the soloists.
Yes. Good. Let's move on to the next question. A friend from Bello, Antioquia, en Medellín, Colombia. Aprovecho para saludar a todos los amigos en Latinoamérica, en español, porque realmente es la comunidad más grande que tenemos. No es en Suiza, curiosamente, ni en Alemania, sino en Latinoamérica, entre otros países, en Argentina, en Colombia, en México sobre todo, y después también en Brasil. Así que un saludo muy especial para todos vosotros. So a friend from Colombia has asked if Bach's genius could be compared to anybody in today's world. That's also a hard one.
That's a hard one, surely. But on the other hand, I can't answer it because I don't know everybody nowadays who is living. I'm sure Bach is one of the outstanding genius composers of the time, like Mozart, Beethoven, and those very, very famous composers. And I'm sure they might be, in our century, people who have got an incredible geniality. What do you think about that, Johann?
Well, I think you are right, and I also think that it's funny to consider that Bach, in his own time, was not really that famous.
Yeah.
you know, he was really famous as an organist. He was really famous as a teacher, but he was not that famous as a composer. Only a lot later became he famous about his way of composing. With Mendelssohn, probably right in the 19th century, the revival started then. But I think it took a long time.
Perhaps I may correct you there.
All right.
I think if you imagine what Mozart and Haydn knew about Bach.
Yes.
That was Van Swieten, and Van Swieten, he was very interested in Bach, so there must have been a tradition. We know that Beethoven used the wohltemperierte Klavier. His teacher Nefe showed him that. I can imagine that a lot of works were still quite known for the superior, but I agree with you that, of course, the vocal works weren't so beloved because the people hated the texts, those Baroque texts. Perhaps that might be a good opportunity to go to this question number 30. A friend from Alabama has what he thinks is a rhetorical question. How does the finest musical mind God ever created continue to be unknown by 99% of all people on the planet today? What would you say about that, Johann?
Well, you know, fine things and great things usually are the realm of a very selected group of people. And that's precisely what we try to avoid here at the Bach Foundation. We want you, we want everybody to get to enjoy these treasures that Bach created. So I would say, of course, I don't know if the percentage is right, 99% of the world's population, but it's certainly a very, very high number of people who do not yet know Bach. And we believe they're missing a great deal of pleasure and of recreation intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, on so many different levels. I accord with you, Johann. I think, on the other hand, if you think what Johann said a few minutes ago, Bach was known as a great keyboard player. There he was very famous. Everybody knew if you want to be better than Bach, it's practically impossible. But as a composer, perhaps his community knowed his compositions, or perhaps in the Hof, in the court, they knew Bach was a great composer. But on the other hand, after they had started to bring out the works in print, that was of course 1850, where they started the big Gesamtausgabe, the whole edition. There, of course, more people could have a look at Bach's pieces. And nowadays, where we've got radio, where we've got gramophone, where we've got CDs, where we've got internet, like you told us, we've got the possibility to really go and try to be missionaries for Johann Sebastian. We really believe that. That's the mission of the foundation. Now, let's move on. Maybe question number 9 is very connected to what we were saying. How do you argue that music composed so long ago can bring so much emotion to today's listeners? What is in its construction that makes it so modern?
I think that's 2 questions. How do you argue that music composed so long ago can bring so much emotion to today's listeners? I think Bach was on one hand a very serious composer. He was a composer who was very interested in bringing over the affect, like that's the word called for the sentiment, for the feelings, to bring the right Baroque effect, like you were saying, the süßer Trost, the consolation, the sweet consolation, or the mourning, or the anger. If you think of sind Blitze, sind Donner in Wolken verschwunden, things like that, is like an opera where you know what it means. You hear the first few notes and everything is clear. And the other question was, what is it in its construction that makes it so modern? I mean, the next question, we could just hang on. Can Bach's music be defined as perpetually, do you say?
Perpetually.
Perpetually contemporary. What would that be in Spanish?
Perpetuamente contemporánea. Es decir, contemporánea siempre. No cesa de ser contemporánea.
What is contemporanea for you? What would you define that? That's a difficult question too.
That's a difficult question too, because music written today can be old in spirit and in nature, and music written 300 years ago can be as modern as anything today. So it's not about the time. It's not about literally the year or the day or the century. It goes beyond that. For me, contemporary, there is something contemporary. Contemporary certainly happening today, but the values of Bach's music written 300 years ago are still current today. And we see it because, just think about jazz players improvising on Bach's music. Just think of music written for the harpsichord, for example, the Galway variations, who now are played by brass ensembles, on the harp, on so many different instrumentations. Why is that possible? Yeah. Well, it's possible because its construction structurally allows for a very great freedom of sonority. I have the impression.
I think so too. I might just say, I think because Bach is such an independent writer, he writes what he thinks is okay. He is not a fashionable composer. Actually, his way of constructing sound, constructing counterpoint is sometimes so incredibly individual that I think that keeps him out of fashion, where you say, I want to have this is fashionable, and after 10 years it's not fashionable. And of course, if you think Goldberg Variation and breakdance, it's an incredible combination. And Bach is always very strong. When you listen to the music, you've got the feeling, yes, it goes. And also a lot of people who listen to Bach and are completely on another way of making music are very fascinated of this composer.
So I hope that answers your question a little bit. Of course, there are so broad questions that we have to limit ourselves a little bit, because otherwise we'll have to open many, many, many bottles today. And it's not even lunchtime.
Well, I'm surely enjoying to have the first sip.
Well, perhaps in another region of the world where our questions come from, it's already lunchtime, that I'm sure. And for instance, we have here a question from Buenos Aires. I don't know if it's lunchtime there at the moment, but it's certainly much warmer than it is here today. I mean, we have snow out there. You can't believe how cold it is. I'm so happy that people in Buenos Aires que nos estáis escribiendo y nos estáis haciendo preguntas también desde tan lejos. Nos hace muchísima ilusión. Gracias. So
I didn't quite understand that. That's a pity. I hope you said something nice, but you were anyway smiling.
I was smiling. That's a good sign.
Yeah. Now the next question.
Yes.
One.
The one from Buenos Aires. Why insist with historicism? Are you not tempted to perform Bach on modern instruments with contemporary techniques? That's also a tricky one.
Well, for me, it's not a tricky one. So I've decided to do it that way, and if anybody does it the other way, I say it's okay. And of course, you can play Bach on the modern piano. You can play it on the cembalo, on the harpsichord. You can play it on the clavichord. That's what I wanted to show before when I said it's so incredible. If you play it on another instrument, other essences, other things come out. It's like with a good sake. My Japanese friends told me, if you take sake, you can take it hot, you can take it cold, you can take it medium, and in every state you smell and scent other things. And I think that's a great thing about Bach.
Yes, and that probably answers why Bach's music is so eternal. It does not depend on fashions, on specific times.
I mean, if you think of this. And when Bobby McFerrin with Jacques Lussier did it functions. It's a great thing. I imagine even old John would have had pleasure. I don't know. Perhaps he would have also taken his wig and say, "Shut up." No idea.
But he was a wonderful improviser, so I believe he would also do, maybe not exactly that, but lots of things also connected to popular music, the popular music of the time. I mean, we know, for instance, the last Golden Variation is based on popular themes.
Yeah, exactly.
Kraut und Rüben haben mich vertrieben. Spinach and cabbage drove me away. That was a popular song at the time. I mean, I'm sure he did something like that. Similar.
I'm convinced
Similar.
too. I'm convinced too.
Yes. That's now a personal question for you, Reddy. What music do you listen to beyond classical music? I mean, do you like other styles, other kinds of music?
It's interesting, when I put in a CD, I normally don't listen to classical music because I have to listen to a lot of classical music in my preparation for Bach, or when I conduct Beethoven. Of course, I listen to the editions of the great conductors, but I like to listen to jazz. I love the jazz ladies, Carmen McRae, people like that. Also the great horn players, the tenor saxes, Ben Webster or Coleman Hawkins. It's a sophisticated music. But sometimes I even play Swiss folk music with a dulcimer, with a Hackbrett that goes like this. That is lovely. Or I take a little Schlager, what do you call that, a song?
Like a hit.
Like a hit, yeah, we've got a few. I know this one. Der Onkel Doktor hat gesagt, ich darf nicht küssen. Ich hab dazu ein viel zu schwaches Herz. Der Onkel Doktor muss das wissen. Der sagt doch sowas nicht zum Scherz. Could you translate what I was saying now? The Uncle Doctor hat gesagt, ich darf nicht küssen. Ich habe dazu ein viel zu schwaches Herz. I would say, do it Spanish.
El señor doctor dice que no puedo dar un beso, porque tengo un corazón demasiado débil.
Und der Onkel Doktor muss das wissen. Der sagt doch sowas nicht zum Scherz.
El señor doctor debe saberlo, porque es doctor, que no es ningún chiste, no es ninguna broma.
Things like that I also love to do. I always was a musician of all sorts of directions of music. I played organ in the church now for more than 50 years. I do a lot of conducting, I do folk music. And of course, Bach is a very essential composer in my life.
Well, I hope that answered your question. So the next question we have was also related to that. Is there any artist in the contemporary pop scene whom you admire? I think you've basically answered that question already.
But I would have to ask you, Schwan. I don't know so many in the really contemporary time. Of course, when I was young, the Beatles were great, and I always very much beloved the Beatles. I think they are great artists. Have you got a contemporary artist of the pop scene, or the hip-hop, or the trip-hop?
I'm going to tell you somebody. There are people who you may not know, but there is somebody I have fondness for, which is Tina Turner, who is a neighbor of Küsnacht in near Zurich, so not so far from here. She lives there now, I think. And I love her passion in performance, so that's a little thing I like.
Lovely.
Now, let's move on. A friend who is writing from Gdansk, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's a bit foreign to us. Sorry if that's not the case. How was your first memorable encounter with the music of Bach? Was his music always around during your early life, or has there been a switching moment after which you became particularly devoted to his music?
I remember that my granny, she was a great musician, didn't like Bach. She said, I hate Bach. It sounds like knitting needles. Well, I mean, you could say it's like a sewing machine. I, of course, had to play Bach in my piano lessons. I think my first Bach was the Gounod. It's still a great piece. And of course, we started with Inventions. Yes.
I started with that one too.
You started with that
C
time.
major,
I
yes.
imagine we're not the only two on earth who started with those two great pieces. Then, of course, I wanted to be organist. I remember that very well because that was a great wish of mine. I, of course, loved, like every organist loves. And I think that was the reason why I wanted to be organist. I'm sure I'm not the only one who wanted to be organist because of this piece.
So you fell in love with that particular toccata?
Oh, sure I did. And I still love it. And we played it, by the way, not a long time ago. I played it with my drummer colleague, with Orlando Ribar. We played it. Did you see that?
I'm
DVD?
aware of that, yes. Yes.
And we played it. We did. And then went on like that. We had great fun. And the fugue. Get it and didn't you get it and didn't it? And I had to keep the tempo. I'm used to doing agogics and rubato. There I had to really keep straight. But it was a good experience. And you see, Bach, I'm sure, would have had a little small grin on his face when he would have heard that. I hope so anyway.
Look out for that on YouTube. I'm sure you will love it. I know it.
It's on YouTube?
Yes, I found it.
Oh,
yeah.
well so.
Yeah, yeah. Now, another question from Bogota, Colombia. How can classical and modern music interact so that classical does not lose its essence and modern impresses us the way classical music has done? I think we have answered that question partially already before. I'm not sure if you want to say something else.
On the other hand, I'm not quite sure if I really understand the question.
Well, I think it has to do with, we were mentioned before in speaking about Bach, that he is a so-called old composer but lives on today because of certain features of his music. I think that might be the meaning.
That might be the meaning.
Yes,
yeah,
we hope so.
We did that.
A friend from Sevilla. Ah, Sevilla. Well, personally, of course, what can I say? Sevilla. One of my best friends is from Sevilla. I've played many concerts myself in Sevilla. Y bueno, ¿qué puedo decir? Un saludo a Sevilla. So he's asking, what cantata has the highest sentimental value for you? That's a hard one. Muy difícil de contestar. A ver qué nos dice Rudolf.
I would ask the friend from Sevilla, which is your favorite bottle of wine? And I think it's about the same. I might mention this cantata we played before this. You know, I'm thinking of my grandchildren. When I had the babies the first time in my arm again, it was such a feeling, exactly this. The baby perhaps even smiling to me, it really touched my heart. And I would say things like that go very much down to the heart. But of course, if you think of Matthew Passion, Aus Liebe will mein Heiland sterben. That's another one which gives me an incredible strong sentimental feeling. But of course also I have to, sorry for the mistake, I listened to the music in my ear and then I sort of played on the piano. This was the Ausgangschor, the last choir in the Matthew Passion. That also gives an incredible energy. But I would say in every cantata I encounter, I've got the feeling I have never heard something like it, and I'm very struck by this incredible passion and the intensity of Bach's new invention.
Well, you have to remember that Rudolf Lutz prepares at extremely high level one cantata every month, among many other commitments. So every time he comes up and plays an excerpt from whatever cantata he played 5 years ago, and he plays it right on the spot. I mean, I just can't believe it. As a musician, I admire that very much. But one thing I also want to say is that, yes, that's striking about Bach, that cantatas are, you know, have a function in the liturgy, and yet every time there is something new about them. They're so different, and even keeping some kind of unity among them, because of course they are use texts that are similar in nature. They have a similar function in church, and still they are so different. It's amazing.
It's amazing, yes. And you see, what happened now, Schwan and I, you could really think we are two good old friends. Perhaps in some way we are, although we don't really. I think the first time you're really having a nice chat about music together,
yes,
in front of camera.
Yes, well.
From Sevilla and from Wolfhalden, St. Gallen, people who go to be really working on Bach, to have a commitment for Bach, they come to that point that they just say, you know, he is a genius. And that is the reason that we can find us here in front of the keyboard in the Gallus studio here in St. Gallen and have a chat about Bach, and we say, yes, we both admire him.
And we're having a wonderful time. Tenemos otra pregunta desde la Ciudad de México, from Mexico City. Which work by Bach conducted by you would you bring to a desert island?
Well, Sean, you know, to be honest, I'm not quite sure if I would take work from Bach conducted by me. Because, you know, when I listen to my recordings, I always then think, ooh, there I could have done it a little better, there it could have been a little bit better, why did that happen? On the other hand, if you would ask me which work would you take to the island, I think I would take the Matthew Passion. It's, for me, Mount Everest.
Well.
And I couldn't tell you in which edition. I would have to first compare the editions, which one I wanted to take with me.
But you will be just, you couldn't wait to come back just to pick them all and bring them all so that you can listen to the differences and appreciate them all, right?
I think that would be the best, the best way of doing it.
St. Matthew's Passion in any case. Now we move on. We remain in America, but we move on to the north, to Palo Alto in California. We have a friend who would like to know more about Mr. Turk, who sang the aria from cantata BBV 166, Wo gehst du hin? Can you tell us something about Mr. Turk?
Mr. Turk, Gerd Turk, is a very well-known singer. He is also professor at the Schola Cantorum Basiliensis, where I'm doing my work as a teacher for improvisation. He's worldwide known. He's one of the tenor singers with Masako Suzuki in Japan, and a very interesting person who is also highly committed with Johann Sebastian Bach.
Well, for those of you who are far away from us, let me just add that the Schola Cantorum Basiliensis is in Basel, which is not so far from here. It's in Switzerland. It's one of the best, or one of the best known music schools for early music. It's here in Switzerland, and if you ever come around and are passionate about early music, go there. You will find out a great deal of things that you will love.
We've also got very many students from South America. For a time they called the school Schola Cantorum Brasiliensis.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a nice one, isn't it?
So that tells you a lot. This is a very interesting question. What is the first thing to take into account when interpreting a song? Now, let's put it another way. Let's not speak about songs. Let's speak about cantatas, movements of cantatas, so whole works by Bach.
That's a great question. I'll love to answer that. Let me take an example from our last cantata. I'll take this recitative. Du teurer Gottessohn. Perhaps you could do a bit of translation. Du teurer Gottessohn.
You dearest Son of God.
Nun hast du mir den Himmel aufgemacht.
You just opened the sky for me.
Und durch dein Niedrigsein,
and because of your being low,
das Licht der Seligkeit zu Wege gebracht. he brought us the light of what is selig?
Selig is happiness, fulfillment.
Yeah, fulfillment.
Yes.
So the first thing I would do is first learn the text, and not only learn the text how you say it. Of course, if an American would say "Du teurer Gottes Sohn," then I would say you can't say it like that. Like if I would speak the English like that, a friend from Palo Alto, California, would like to know more about Mr. Turk. You would say, oh, that doesn't sound very nice. So the pronunciation is important, but I think more knowing what it means. That I would say, "Du teurer Gottes Sohn." I would say that to you, "Du teurer Gottes Sohn." You person who means a lot for me. Nun hast du mir den Himmel aufgemacht. What is that? I opened up the heaven. Und durch deine Niedrigkeit, because you came here to us to be our Savior. You even went to the cross. You had the terrible things to do. You went down. Durch das Licht der Seligkeit zu Wege gebracht. You brought us the light in going down. You have to understand what that means. You don't only have to be able to read it. And then, of course, and then I have to study the... Du teurer Gottes Sohn. If I would sing, Du teurer Gottes Sohn, then you would say, oh, your pitch is terrible. Du teurer Gott. The sound is terrible. You know, it's hard learning singing. You need the singing teacher who shows you how you do it. Perhaps in Basel at the Schola Cantorum Brasiliensis, we've got singing teachers who show you how did they do it the days before, or how did they produce that, because they read in the books, in the sources. You must do it like here, or do it like here, like that. We don't know it. We've got no recordings. We don't know how it really sounds. So we have to do it approximately. But I say, first, read the text, first understand the text, then recite the text, then begin to learn the music, and then bring that all together. And then afterwards do a performance, do a recording, look how it comes over. Have you got this intensity of the idea? Are you really telling a story? That would be about my idea of learning a song.
I take home that, are you really telling a story? I think it's a very important question to ask yourself when you're a performer. Now we have 3 questions, also technical in that they approach the craft of making music and preparing the cantatas. The question comes from Tigre, Uruguay. We've never been there, but Tigre is a very special name, tiger. 3 questions. When conducting the choir, do you tell the singers, and especially the sopranos, not to use their chest voice or overproject their voices? That's the first one. The second one, in a chorale cantata, should the section singing the chorale melody be highlighted or rather treated as another line of the polyphony? And the third one, do you tell the string and wind players to use legato or not when conducting Bach?
I might start with the third question. Legato or not legato, I would say very differentiated articulation. Sometimes it's a legato, sometimes it's a yada, da, ti, da. You know, the dance influence was incredible in those times, and Bach was a great court musician. So differentiated, all concerning the text and the story I want to tell. In the chorale cantata, should the section singing the chorale melody be highlighted or rather treated as another line of the polyphony? I think that's a great question. If you say, I take the chorale melody, nun danket alle Gott, nun danket alle Gott. These were all the other voices, and the public, of course, those days knew exactly that was the chorale. So I could say, if it's here, if it's hearable, if it's audible, that's okay. Nowadays, perhaps I take it up, but I'm not of the meaning you do it in this romantic way where you shout out the chorale. So I prefer to have it embedded in the other melodies to hear the connection between the melodies and the chorale. Now, what is overproject? I don't know the word.
Overproject must mean overproject their voices. that they bring out so that they're singing very loudly.
Ah, yes. That's why. No, I don't tell them to not use the chest voice. I also don't ask them to overproject their voices. I just listen in the church. Are they audible? If I don't hear a voice and I say, could you get that out? But they are professionals, so they actually know what they have to do when they sing. I just say, please do it like in a professional orchestra. I would never tell a violin player how he should play his violin, but I say short, loud, with more intensity and things like that. And then I sort of get to the point I want to come to.
Let me add one thing to that question. Our critics usually say that one of the biggest qualities of the orchestras and the choirs playing conducted by you, as heard in the recordings, is the great balance, the great taste of balance that is achieved. So I would say that, you know, to overproject their voices is not really something that is intended. And on the contrary, the intention is to achieve this beautiful balance.
Yes, exactly.
Between the lines. Yeah. Yes.
We could perhaps even go to a question 35.
Yeah.
I'm not at all a music specialist nor historian, but I notice in your videos that the choir and orchestra are both relatively small in comparison to other performances of Bach choral works that I have seen. Herbert von Karajan, St. Matthew's Passion comes to mind. I love the intimacy, la intimidad of your arrangement. How did you decide to do this? Were they antecedents to this type of performance, or am I just imagining things? I think very well observed, and I'm not at all the first who has this small group of performers. You could say it's a historical research. Perhaps you know the very well-known Entwurf of die Kirchenmusik in Leipzig, which Bach wrote to his clergymen and to the committee. It would be sort of a draft showing what do I have for forces for to perform. And he says, look, I've got about 40, 50 boys I can use from the school, and I've got 4 churches. Every Sunday I have to see that there's a choir working. It is at least I need 2 or 3 per voice to get a bit of a feeling of a choir. So it was clear Bach didn't have those incredible forces Handel had for his water music, where he worked with thousands, or the Messiahs with those hundreds of singers. And I think he also composes differently. George Frederick Handel, you can enjoy having a big opera. And I think the intimacy of Bach's way of writing music shows that he exactly wants to have small groups where you really are capable of hearing all these details. Because if you imagine you've got a choir of 300 people singing it, they are so filling the scene. It's not loud, it's full, that you've got the feeling you can't hear a second oboe.
And small things come in small packages. Sorry, good things come in small packages. I think that's, you know, big, great performance and things like that. So I think that also applies to our performances.
Yeah. That was a little verbe slogan. What's that in English?
Yeah, it was a bit of a small commercial that I just did.
23, I think.
Yes.
Is our next question.
A friend from Fairfield, Connecticut, I was just there a few days ago in Connecticut, asked why was it that Bach's music was lost for so long in time? I think we already answered that question.
We did.
Yes.
Definitely. Van Zweten, who brought it along, and Mendelssohn, very important, the Matthew Passion, and so on.
Yeah. Let's move on to question 25, which comes from New York. A friend would like to know how many more cantatas do we still have to record, and how much time this will take. Well, maybe you answer that. Because we've been, the foundation has existed since 2006, if I understand correctly.
We just reckoned out yesterday, it's our 74th cantata we recorded now, last week, and they're about 200 cantatas, sacred cantatas, about 20 non-sacred cantatas, a few oratorios, motets, so Well, we're quite nice in it, I would say, and we might go on about till 2030.
Get ready. Just live long so that you can enjoy it. Now, 26 from Massachusetts, Westfield, Massachusetts. Are all our singers from Switzerland?
No, they come from the region here around. It's Germany, it's Austria. We've also got people coming from the north. We've got a Norwegian sopran singer, Guro Jemli, and of course all people who came to the Schola who are known in the scene here for historical performances.
That's the answer to that question. 28.
I may not forget, of course, the singers come from all over the world. The soloists. I've got a few Japanese singers and from America and from England, Peter Harvey, Charles Daniels, Joan Lunn, people like that.
Well, Andrea Scholl was with us last June. Not to forget, it was a beautiful performance. So yes, the soloists are international also. Now we have a question from Brazil, from Uberaba. Somebody would like to know more about Bach's childhood.
Well, we know a bit about it. He was already orphan, a full orphan at 10. He came to his brother's house. His elder brother showed him how organ was to be played. He went there to school, of course. Then he came to Lüneburg, to the gymnasium. And there at the high school, imagine he encountered Georg Böhm, another very well-known organ master. And with 18, he was already organist at a middle important position in Arnstadt. Then he went to Lübeck, to Buxtehude, to make master courses. And I could say, you see, Bach was a very independent person who looked for his teachers and learnt a lot through observation and self-studies.
Well, I even heard that Bach walked to take the lessons with Buxtehude, which must have been, I'm not sure, many
kilometers.
So
yes.
I'm not sure if the story is true.
I think it is.
It is?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that shows you how committed he was and how passionate.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we don't do that these days. Most of us, we just take the underground or even planes. Now let's move on to question 31. What's the significance of the phrase 4 und 4 in the cantatas? What is 4 and 4?
If it's the 4/4 at the beginning of the staffs, it will be a 4/4-takt. I thought that might be it.
Yeah.
Then you know it's like 1, 2, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If that's the meaning of the question.
Yes.
Well, I wasn't quite sure. Perhaps you've got another?
I'm not sure either, but I saw a comment on YouTube just commenting on this, and another friend thinks that it might actually be 4 und 4, nicht 4 und 4. It might be a misunderstanding.
That might also be a good explanation.
Yeah, 4 und 4 is just 4. It's just it's just a preposition.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now we have a question from Georgia in the USA, from Macon. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation of the place. Why do you all insist on using the traditional tuning of the Baroque rather than modern tuning? We're coming back to a question that was asked before already. Traditional tuning and Baroque tuning. Well, traditional tuning, what is traditional tuning?
Exactly.
Another question,
it's a
right?
good question. Perhaps you could say it's that what one says is the traditional tuning. We say today it's 440, but in Berlin it's 444. So that the pitch is always rising, and at the time it was 438. In the Baroque time it was approximately 415 in the way the orchestras played at the time of Bach. You can see that if you've got historical instruments like oboes or perhaps organs even better, where you can say the A is not here but it's on this pitch. But of course you had higher organs, they were on 465, so the organist in Bach's time always had to play everything a note lower to be on the same pitch. I think because they did it and the rebuild of the old instruments are on the old pitch, we have decided to take this pitch.
So the answer would be rather just to an attempt to approach the original sound in a way.
On one hand, but on the other hand, it is a great difference if a soprano or a tenor who has to sing very high has to sing this note, or this little semitone, which is lower in the Baroque. That helps the singer very much.
I believe that. If you have ever tried singing, you realize that immediately.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, a friend from Colorado will love to have us go there, go to America to perform. Any chance of a tour in North America?
I must ask our manager if he's got any plans or if he's heard about anything.
Well, we have not planned. We have not yet planned on doing that because of various reasons. You also have to take into account that the foundation is funded with private funds. So for us, it's difficult to assume the costs of international touring. But who knows? Maybe in the future an opportunity will arise. Somebody will help us go there. I mean, I think we will be open to that.
Absolutely, and it would be, of course, a great chance to meet at another place.
Another place, yes. And as I'm saying, very many of our friends are in North and Latin America. So let's keep an eye on that. Help us realize that.
I saw a question from a friend from London, and I think because my granny was English, she came from opposite the Isle of Wight. She spoke an impeccable, old-fashioned English. I would like to ask you this question, Johann. A friend from London who describes herself as a total Bach fanatic writes to us and tells us that, even as a non-Christian, Bach music speaks of human emotions and conditions in the purest form. The question to you, how can Bach's music have this spiritual effect on people of different religions?
Well, that's a very interesting question. We've touched on that already in the beginning of our conversation. Well, I would like to just take an example of a piece of music that has not been, like the cantatas, written for a specific instrumentation, bears no dedication, bears no indication of any kind, the art of the fugue, among other things. Now, can you imagine that Bach, as a religious man, like he was, working for the church, teaching music, he would also compose something written for no instrument and with no dedication. Who was he writing for when he was writing that music? Was he writing for God, for himself? Was he writing pure music? We have no idea. But the art of the fugue is something that touches me very, very, very deeply as a piece of music, as much as a cantata which bears a text and has a religious meaning. So there is something about Bach's structural thought and about Bach's way of conveying meaning, either with a text or without, that touches me very deeply. And I think goes beyond our Western civilization. Very recently I came across a video on YouTube of the St. Matthew's Passion set in Arabic. I don't know if you know that.
No.
So one aria, Erbarmedish, of course, a great aria with a text sung in Arabic language. And I said, this is unbelievable. I mean, what other composer allows that enormous flexibility? I mean, of course, then it's a matter of whether the performance is a great performance or not, if the structure and the meaning are preserved. But the fact that the meaning goes well beyond one given language, well beyond one given instrumentation, strikes me deeply. What do you think?
I think that's a very interesting thought. I had another thought concerning the spirituality of Bach. I mean, if a person is always in connection with liturgical texts, with biblical texts, his life is sort of like marinated in this sort of talking and thinking. I think it's a person whom doesn't in one music believe and then the other music does not believe. He believes, so it's his spirit, it's his personality which shows also in music, where you could say the art of fugue is just an incredible piece of thought, of combination. Can you take it like this, or do you do it like this in the inversion, in the augmentations? You play the piece. Terribly difficult, isn't it?
Oh.
There I'm sure he wanted to also show all the incredible possibilities. And why not also think in a medieval way, where you say all art sorts of is a microcosmos of the big macrocosmos God invented.
So a reflection of the universe.
Yes.
Right. That's a very deep issue.
But I mean, also great questions. I really was happy with all these questions we got from you, friends.
It's a great community that we have out there.
Seems to be, really.
I think for us it's also a great pleasure giving things to them, because we get so much.
Isn't it interesting? We wanted to answer our questions in 10 minutes. Now we are already soon more than five quarters of an hour.
So.
And we're going on, but we're coming on.
Yes.
It's number 36.
Yes, a friend from Aberdeen, also in the UK, would like to know why Bach is relevant today. Well,
I think
we've answered that question.
The whole time we're answering that question.
Profusely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
So listen back, please, and you will find the answer to that question.
Great.
A friend from Chino, California. I love the young people, good looks and devotion to the works. Are the performers mostly from the region? Are they recent graduates? We've also answered that question before. Many of the musicians are from the region, but soloists are also from international countries. Yes. And they are professional musicians, but I think that we also have people who are still at school. Is that true?
Yeah, well, normally they've already done their degrees.
Their degrees, yes.
But it's not necessary. If somebody is a great player or a great singer, we are happy to have them.
And a musician is a perpetual student, because we study all life. So
that's true.
Great. A friend from Lyon, France, asks how has the practice of improvisation modified your way of playing and directing Bach? I'm very much looking forward to that question, because Rudolf Lutz is a great, wonderful improviser.
That's a very important question I received from Lyon. The practice of improvisation. How did it modify my way of playing and directing Bach? You look, see, if I take a text, you choose one here, it doesn't matter what. It's a cantata, I know, but I'll try to invent something else.
All right, so I'm going to take this aria.
Yeah, the aria called Lasst der Spötter Zungen schmähen. That's difficult to translate. Do it in Spanish.
Well, schmähen, I don't even understand it myself. Well, now you got it. That's the meaning. Lasst der Spötter Zungen, the tongues of the people who are mocking.
Yes.
Las lenguas de aquellos que se burlan, las lenguas de los burladores. Well, that's very heavy stuff.
That's quite heavy,
That's heavy stuff.
And he says, Lasst der Spötter Zungen schmähen, es wird doch und muss geschehen. It has to happen. Let the mockers mock. I'm sure it will be fine, that Jesus will come again when it's time. Now, Bach uses this solution. And then the soprano sings, Lass der Spötter Zungen beschmähen, es wird doch und muss geschehen, dass wir Jesum werden sehen, auf den Wolken, in den Höhen, es wird doch und muss geschehen. Bach himself, he uses this gavotta, ram, bi da 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 di di da di da da, and the ba da ba da ba da bam. Perhaps it's that. I'm not quite sure if it's the mocking, or it also might be the person who says, "No, I'm not going to be influenced by these persons." So I could also imagine when I prepare the piece and don't know the Bach solution that I would say, Lass der Spötter Zungen schmähen, Zungen schmähen. This would be another possibility. So I improvise and try to find out solutions I would find, not knowing Bach, and that's great, because then I can take that, my solution, then put Bach on it, and then I say, ah, he looks for that solution. And then I've got normally a new insight. Why didn't he do it like I wanted to do it? Although I know a lot of Bach, he did it perhaps because of this elegancy of the piece, I realized. And that's why it helps me a lot to understand the music. On the other hand, it also helps me to understand harmonical progressions, let's say here. This is the bass beginning of the piece. I'll play the piece again. But I could also do another music. Oh. So I would do my own Goldberg variations on another bass. I can understand the bass if I work on that bass as an improviser. If I make fugues, I understand how difficult it is to build a fugue. It is perhaps the same if you imagine, if you ever made a tree home, a tree hut, you know what is statics, what the problems is from an architect. If you do it yourself, you will afterwards have the consideration how difficult it is to produce such an incredible music. And so I'm sure that improvisation is a great, great tool for me to have more understanding for Bach's music.
Well, it's been a wonderful explanation. I have the feeling that when I hear you improvise, I have the feeling you speak Bach's language. You get into the same way of speaking musically, and therefore you can understand him so well and choose what is for you the right interpretation.
I would say that's the way I try to find the interpretation, in trying to get in what could have been his idea. But I'm absolutely sure any other conductor would say exactly the same, and the products are so completely different. So I think the individual attack to the piece is also very important. If you don't do it, it's something which hasn't got a face. And that's what we're trying to find in our Bach society, to find a face of how we try to understand it. But we do it with all our forces and our emotions and our intensity.
Wonderful. Now, this is an interesting question. I don't know where it comes from. I'd like to know whether Bach's work has ever disappointed you in some way, even on a very superficial or seemingly insignificant level.
No, absolutely not. Performances can disappoint me, but I think I seldom found any piece which which is worse than very good. You understand the level? Of course, you find very, very early works where Bach wrote his Neumeister Choral. There he was a student. There one sees already his genius coming through. There one sometimes finds little mistakes or things which you think that might be a bit awkward, but it's still on an incredible level.
From a very early age.
From a very early age,
Yes.
like with Mozart and Beethoven too.
Like with all great geniuses. Now, we have a question from England. When can we see you in London? St. John Smith Square would be the perfect venue.
Please invite us. Would be so lovely.
Help us come
I've
there.
never ever performed in Britain, imagine.
Well, we gotta make it happen. Now we have another question. We're getting to the end of our series. A friend who has sent multiple questions on the same issue. I was wondering about the evolution that you see over time in the cantatas. I guess they become more complex and evolved. But can this be expressed in musical terms as orchestration, musical novelties, etc.? The second question. Also, what about the musical influences in Bach cantatas by Luther? And what makes Bach special? How can you distinguish him from other composers? Does he have a musical watermark?
I like that the idea of a composer having a watermark, a special watermark. Perhaps I could answer to that question. We were already on it when, at the beginning of our session, I explained how Bach sort of uses the Legos of the time. We had this This is something any composer could write, also the bass. And then the flute playing. These figures. Here you also find this figure. He uses the Legos from his contemporary, but the way he builds them together is so impressive. This could be one watermark, his individuality, his independence. I think we were talking quite a lot about these questions.
Yes.
Are you accord with me?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you've touched on one of the most fundamental points, which is this innate ability to construct and to structure in a very specific way, like you just showed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, what about the musical influences in Bach's cantatas by Luther? I would say Luther is the main influence in his cantatas, because the officials had their clear ideas how the Bible had to be interpreted. Mm-hmm. They said this is the way, and Luther said it this way, and so I think we could also here cut up a big chunk of cheese to our seventh bottle to go on discussing what Luther was for Bach. There we would have to have our clergyman, perhaps our Karl Graf. He would surely be best information for us.
Perhaps next time he will have something to say.
Why not?
Yes.
Now the first question, the evolution visible in the cantatas. It's quite a difficult question. Konrad Küster in the Bach Handbuch tried to explain the development from cantata to cantata, and it is obviously really difficult. I'm not sure if I would be able to really find out if it's an early or not early cantata. Of course, you say the gallant influence starts coming in, but actually it starts very early. And if you look at the pieces Bach wrote in Weimar when he was 35 and 36, they are masterpieces in the same manner. Perhaps, of course, in the very early cantatas, like in Mühlhausen, there you realize it sounds still quite like Buxtehude. There I might be able to say that comes from that period. But on the other hand, when I try to say that must be 1727 or 29, I'm normally not correct. A very great and difficult question. How does the stylistical development happen?
Now let's move on to the one of the last questions. A friend from Batna in Algeria would like to know what has been your biggest professional success.
What a special question. I would say if I'm able to touch someone's heart and this person comes along after the concert and says, Rudi Lutz, I'm so happy, then I've got the feeling that was a great success of my performance. And of course, if I play a very difficult organ work where I say, there, I really had a good feeling when I played it, that can also be a great success for me. But I think over all these many decades I've been performing, if people come along and say, you know, Bach is a great composer, then I'm really very happy. How is it with you?
Well, I think the first thing you said about touching somebody's heart, you know, after you've been learning, practicing for so many hours, with just trying to get the idea what the composer wanted to say, what did he want to express with this music. When somebody after the concert comes to you and said, "You touch my heart," that's something of the most beautiful things that you can ever experience, and it's a compensation for all the pains
definitely
that we experience as musicians.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Now, a friend from the UK, do you take music around to schools, Also, is it possible to get children from all backgrounds to play and love classical music? I ask this because in the UK, people who go to concerts of, say, Bach, tend to come from a specific age and social class. It seems too sad that this fantastic art and music should not be taught to be understood by all young people. What do you have to say?
It's a great question. I consider it's very important we go to school. Of course, you're quite right that it's a small little part of the population really getting the education they need to understand Bach. But if you go to school, we go to school. I do it once a year. It's not very much, but we do it. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're trying to show people how we work it in. Karl Graf and me, my clergyman, and I at the Einführung, at the introductions in Trogen, we do that the same. I'm very interested to explain complicated things in a language which people can understand. That's why I always want to have my keyboard here that I can say, look, listen, do you imagine how this sounds? And then if I play it, the people can say, oh, okay, I can listen to it. I remember once I was working with youngsters. They played their favorite music for me, and then one of the girls had a piece. I don't know. It was some incredible thing like. And I said, yeah, lovely. Is that pop? And then she looked at me disgusted and said, no, that's, I don't know what it is, sorry. It's trip-hop. And then I said, well, what's the difference? And then she started to explain to me, you know, trip-hop, I can't explain it to you. Please don't say that I know what it is. I just realized that I didn't know what it was. It was small little differences in the beat, in the way it's a style. And the youngsters, they've got ears like I when I'm listening to Bach. So it is terribly important that I come into a level where the people are able to hear the differences, and then they say, ah, yes, I heard that. Ah, yes, I could recognize that. And then they are already little experts. And then if they've got music school, of course, that's great, learning an own instrument. And looking at perhaps Bach and breakdance. All these remixes, all these combinations are a great chance. And our foundation is doing that a lot. We are planning for next year at the Appenzell Bachtage 2 items, Bach at school. And so I think if we all try to do this, all we music teachers and conductors, giving the audiences an introduction, inviting people to show classical music, I'm sure we're doing a great good job about this.
That's absolutely true, and I want to remind you of that date next year in August. We are producing our first festival in the summer in Appenzell, so in the region where we're based. Not in St. Gallen, but just outside in 3 locations. We will be doing so-called Bach in the Schule, Bach at school, with many students. I'm not sure about their age.
No, I would say something about 15 to 18.
Yes. Coming from 2 different schools, they will be participating in our festival, taking part actively in that. And there will be also for older people what we call an academy with lectures on various aspects of Bach performance practice. So really, education is a strong part of the Foundation's mission. Keep tuned to our website and everything we do, because you will find lots and lots of educational resources.
Great.
Yes. Now, let's do probably our last question.
I think so too, yeah.
What has the future prepared for Baroque and classical music? How do you perceive current times are affecting these arts? Has the audience decreased too much in the last decades? Will be there any audience at all within the following 60 years? Well, we are 3 years on the go, so I think at least 30 years are granted of Bach's music. 60 years, I don't know. I hope so. What do you think?
I'm quite sure, Johann, that Bach will survive us all. I'm quite sure about that. He was fascinated generations of musicians. He's fascinated jazz musicians, and I'm quite sure. Also, if you think of all these possibilities of the net, of the worldwide web.
Yes.
How many performances of Bach you find. And don't forget that, perhaps you didn't know it, do you know who is the composer who is used very much for film music? It's Johann Sebastian Bach.
Right.
I had to do a study on that, and we were incredibly astonished how many films use his music. And I'm sure that this last question, will there be any audience at all within the following 60 years? I would bet yes, and I imagine you too.
Yes, well, I'm planning to be alive in 60 years, and even if I am not, I think other people will keep the mission. And the Bach Foundation certainly wants to help you know Bach, enjoy it, and pass it on to further generations. So I think that's a nice way of wrapping up our conversation. It's been great to share this hour with you.
And with you, Schwan. It was a lovely encounter. I enjoyed it, and I was so happy that I was allowed to tell you all my things which really burn in my heart.
Really, it's been a pleasure, and I think this is a nice moment to close and wish our followers a wonderful Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful time. Thank you for watching.